first thing we really need to talk about is what wasn't revealed, which was the pricing. And wow, I mean, we're looking at a Q1 2026 release. And we've got a machine which I think is fair to say, if you looked at the top of the Steam hardware survey, the spec that they've put together is essentially very similar to, like, the most popular CPU, the most popular GPU. So it's quite an interesting spec choice there. But the fact that they're unable to tell us about pricing at this time, Oliver, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about it. I went through my notes for when we discussed it, and they seem to indicate that they might not have a straightforward price for at this time, but it did seem like they were going to maybe give us more of an indication at this time, and they didn't really give us any indication as far as I'm aware, for at least for Steam Machine, a little bit more for Steam Frame, which we can talk about in a minute. But I think it's really hard to come up with a fair price for these products, in part because of DRAM pricing, which is like a global issue. And there you just have like spot prices for like DDR5 kits going up into crazy levels as, the AI boom is eating up all the supply of DRAM and forcing various suppliers to retool their production lines to produce more server RAM and HBM and things like this. That's not ideal. The other issue, of course, is tariffs, where, we've talked about this a few times in the context of like the ROG Ally devices, but like it really depends on the way things are assembled, and the Section 301 tariffs apply differently if the system is a console, for instance, classified as a console, or a PC, right? That all differs. I think that the higher prices that people are suggesting, like $600 in that range, are probably a little bit more reasonable. I don't think it's going to compete necessarily with PS5 directly on price. In a really fulsome manner, maybe more closer to the Series X in terms of pricing, which itself has been inflated considerably in price since its launch there. But yeah, I think maybe a $600 price tag would be reasonable. I think they might announce some details on that in the new year, but I think a $600 price tag would be more reasonable for that system. I think the Steam controller will probably be something like $80 or $100. It's a pretty high-tech piece of kit. And then, of course, comes with the Steam machines. That might add a little bit to the bill of materials there as well. If you think about it, for Steam Frame, they've indicated that it'll be below the price in the index flat out, which is a $1,000 machine. So here I think maybe $800 or $900 would be reasonable. And I think that actually makes a lot of sense because it has unique capabilities. It can do special things with SteamOS. It can do all kinds of cool things with standalone PC games. If you want a VR gaming device, and really a VR, not XR device, and a gaming device, not a multimedia device, I think it's probably like the best thing in the market at the moment, or at least it will be when it launches in early 2026. So I think there, the price proposition, even though it's a narrower slice of a smaller market potentially, it is a really cool device that I think people are going to be really attracted to, kind of independent of that price tag almost.
Right. Okay. There's a lot to wade through there. I think the entire concept of a console versus PC price differential there is raising a lot of questions, because typically, traditionally, the concept is that a console is a kind of mainstream priced device, and the cost of it is offset by the cost of software. And Valve is pretty much the only person in the only entity in the PC ecosystem that can do that, because they get, whatever it is, 30% of every software sale on Steam. So, they're in a pretty good position to actually subsidize hardware. But the only reason they would do that is if it actually brings about more games being sold, right, to offset the cost there. They could definitely do a $399 console, but it would cost them a lot of money. I've got to wonder how they'll do that. But at the same time, they did do a $399 handheld, which they did acknowledge at the time was costing them a lot of money. So it really depends on what the strategic play is. Why are they actually making the device, and will it be worthwhile for them to actually take the hit on the build costs there and effectively sell them at a loss? The problem is, I think, that when you compare it to console, you've got here a spec that is, how can I say it? It's kind of like slightly better than PlayStation 5 in some regards, but probably a fair bit worse on the GPU side. And yet it's coming out like 5 and a bit years after the PlayStation 5 for a much more expensive price point. So if the strategy here is to actually grab some console market share, I don't think that's going to happen. which kind of then brings into question, well, why are they making the device if it's not to expand the total addressable market for Steam? I think there's a lot going on there. Maybe they've been forced into some unwelcome pricing decisions by the fact that, we are in these weird times where things are costing a lot more money. On the DRAM side of things, I can't imagine Valve are paying spot price.
No.
Surely they would have allocated a supply of memory modules like a long time ago, once they'd firmed up the spec and they'd understood when they were going to release it. But I guess for future production runs, that might be a completely different story, right? Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, well, there is a lot to say here. I think pricing, if you just look at this from a consumer perspective, avoiding the console comparison, I think what they're going to give you for the price is going to be lower than building the most equivalent spec'd AMD machine that you can get, because you'd be paying different kind of I would say fees to the motherboard manufacturer, to the case manufacturer, heatsink fan manufacturer, AMD themselves for the GPU and CPU, power supply. You're essentially going to be getting the nice subsidizing effect there on the hardware components in comparison to what you would get for building your own PC, I presume, here. That otherwise, the buy-in beyond the simplicity is not as, I would say, as enticing. I think it's got to feel like a deal, in at least for some people in some market. And I think that's going to be for those who would be maybe opting to grab a pre-built or grab their own PC that they built themselves. And I think they're going to actually target a lower price there. But whether or not they need to and will be console pricing that we were just talking about, this like PS5-esque experience, I don't know how necessary that is, even though I would really love that to be the case. It would be amazing if there was a good enough spec'd machine that could run a lot of games and was cheap like a console is in an all-in-one form factor. That'd be wonderful. But at the same time, due to the market this may or may not be addressing, that may not be a necessity. Because like you said, if you've already only been convinced by consoles, I'm not sure this is the thing for you. But if you're a lot of those people in the Steam hardware survey who still have like GTX 1650s and really janky old Core i3s, or something like that, this upgrade for you might be really palpable from a performance perspective. And then it also might make the cost, like the one problem when you're upgrading an old PC into a new one is you're rebuilding the whole thing if you're switching motherboards. It's like why the AM4 to AM5 upgrade is always like a big question. Should we do it? Should we not? Should you not do it? And I feel like this could cover those people who are on an, really older, like Ryzen 1 series, Ryzen 2 series, older core Intel PCs with, your GTX 1060, GTX 1650s, or even a base GTX 2060, maybe something like that, or even an older laptop. This could be an upgrade path to get you having a new PC experience that covers most games that is cheaper. And I feel like that is a market that this could also be addressing. People that have older PCs but have been waiting for so long because they don't like what they see. And that apparently, according to the Steam hardware survey, that's still a lot of people.
Right. Okay. Who is this machine for then, Oliver, based on all of that?
Well, I think it's probably for a certain kind of cost-minded consumer who's interested in a PC gaming experience, interested in trying it out in kind of a home theater type environment, and someone who maybe is coming from a system that's a little bit older, or coming from a Steam Deck. Maybe they entered the Valve ecosystem through the Steam Deck. They're looking for another kind of device. I don't think it's the kind of machine that necessarily should particularly interest current gen console users who already have a machine, are already happy there, are maybe looking forward to next generation console hardware in the future. It's more of a mass market device, but at the same time, it's critical. I don't think it's going to be at the same price level. Like I noted that right now, I think Sony is offering PS5s for £350 or $400 right? In it with a bundle with like some Fortnite package. I don't think we're going to necessarily see that level of pricing aggressiveness with this product.
Yeah, and you've got to wonder whether it is actually attempting to steal any sort of console audience, bearing in mind they're already deeply embedded in their own ecosystems with libraries of games that are not going to run on it. Although, ironically, of course, your Xbox games, if you've got Xbox Play Anywhere, you'll be able to play them on this.
Really?
I would have thought.
Yeah.
Actually, no, you wouldn't, because there's no Game Pass support for Linux. So maybe if you installed Windows on it, which kind of defeats the point of the device. But yeah, there's certainly an interesting idea of what this machine, how they actually came about the specifications. Obviously, the fact that it is essentially running older hardware, it's not really forward-looking in any way, I'd say. Is kind of down to the fact that they just want to be able to appeal to as many people in the PC space as possible via a low price point. So, if that is the whole point of the exercise and we don't know what the pricing is, that's a bit of a big question mark over the whole endeavor at the moment. But I just think, the concept and the execution, the actual form factor of the device and some of the cute stuff that it does, it's amazing how little flourishes and cute finishing touches can actually make a product that much more appealing. So the form factor, the stuff they're doing with the replaceable face plates, all of that stuff, it kind of, what can you say? It makes it a lot more desirable compared to, your reaction to, a PC with a downclocked RX 7600 normally would be.